This is TWiT.
An app called Artifact, which is being created by the co-founders of Instagram, Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger, who, of course, sold Instagram to Facebook in 2012, but then less in 2018. And Artifact is super interesting. It's basically the idea of applying the success and the strategies of TikTok to news. So Artifact is a personalized news feed driven by artificial intelligence. And it is currently in private beta, though you can sign up for the waitlist at artifact.news. I did so this afternoon. And what's really interesting is that Artifact is trying to combine kind of a lot of different, things in a kind of like TikTok-y, Twitter-y niche. So there's, basically an idea of combining high quality news information. So Artifact will basically include news from certain publishers that they're trying to filter for, high quality news information for publishers that only adhere to, quote, editorial standards of quality, and then combining that with a recommendation algorithm based on posts and stories similar. So if you tap on a story, the idea is that Artifact will generate kind of like, or provide to you, similar stories and posts, not unlike what, TikTok does, where it tries to show you kind of like related content based on what you view. And then on top of that, what I think they also see as part of their, experience is also bringing the conversation into it. So that's kind of maybe where a kind of Twitter-esque, vibe comes in, because a lot of Twitter is not just, as a news, not just it being a news source, but also the conversation that happens around it. So the idea of Artifact is to combine all of these things, throw in a whole bunch of, ML, and then to create basically TikTok for news, which is like a very kind of like simplistic way of like phrasing it, but that's kind of where we're at. And, it is, using, what is really interesting is that kind of part of what is making this work is the Google invented Transformer, which is a utility that allows a system to understand language. And TIL, Transformer, which again is this Google invented kind of like system, is the T in Chat GPT. So again, this is kind of playing off the technology that are currently fueling the AI ML zeitgeist. And yeah, so that they have that cooking. It is in private beta. It's, still in the works. And, there's all kinds of things, all kinds of questions that have yet to be answered. What's the business model? What is the end goal of this going to be? But, you can try and join the beta, and they're trying to like admit people as fast as they can. And see what it is, but kind of very interesting things coming, very interesting machine learning driven things coming from the co-founders of Instagram. So yeah, keep an eye for that if maybe you feel like you have a Twitter-sized hole in your internet heart right now, and in your heart right now, and you wanted to maybe fill it up with something, a little ML. So
yeah, do you think that's what this is really going to end up being, kind of like a replacement or a potential replacement for, because I definitely have used Twitter over the years as kind of a news, a way to tap into news in a way that is not me visiting a news site and reading all of their stories from the front page or whatever. It's like open up Twitter and see what people are reacting to right now, and then I know what the big stories are right now, or going to the trending tab and finding the news, stories from there, and that's how I look into that. Do you think that's kind of what this is aiming to do better, is like a replacement for, let's say, Twitter as a news source?
It really does feel like it, especially they really do emphasize that they're trying to only serve news from publishers that are high quality, and that's regardless of political spectrum.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you define high quality? Blah, blah,
but
blah.
It does seem that Systrom and Krieger are opinionated on the idea that, they as a company will need to step in when it comes to moderating for safety and, ethics and, social responsibility. So that's there, have it as you will. And I do think it would be kind of, maybe if you're the kind of person that's kind of jumping off the bird side, it does feel like it's positioned and trying to be that, right? And there is a kind of feed where there's going to be curated postings, which is kind of like, part of like maybe more of a discovery kind of thing, right? And then there's more hey, here are posts from people that you follow. So I do think so. I'm super interested in that regard, because I think that, discovery and also the kind of like emphasis on news is something that's less, like a stream of news that is a little bit kind of outside maybe necessarily what I might be following directly in terms of like people that I follow on Mastodon or whatever. I do think that is missing from like by not having Twitter, right? It's discovering, people and voices and like content that you might not necessarily, have discovered on your own, and to kind of avoid the kind of echo chamberiness in a sense. So I don't know. I think that could be it, especially, if they have a good algorithm, because that's kind of what made TikTok, right? Is their recommendation and the virality that could be generated by a really good, recommendation system. So yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
What then is different between this and Google News?
I don't know.
No, I mean, it's not Google. Right. It's
that's a good point. That's a good point.
Right. It's a new player. But to your point, this is way more of a Google, I agree with you. It's a Google News competitor more so than a Twitter.
It really
competitor.
seems to be that way to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
maybe
there's a social aspect that is missing from Google News. But what you get out of Google News is definitely sourced by the zeitgeist, but sourced by the people using it, and it has a personalization aspect of it too. Like these are stories that are important to you.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, Google News is. I mean, as we all know, it's 100% driven by your own search. Like I see a direct correlation within hours of a search for something with a news item popping up in my Google News feed. Mm-hmm. Like it is the only thing that comes close to the quickness and responsiveness is how quickly I see an ad in Instagram based on something I talked about, like verbally. Like I'll talk about Fender guitars and then I'll see an ad for Fender guitars in like 3 hours. But and yeah, because Facebook and Meta, they're not listening to it on our phones at all. Yeah. But
I think this guy over here wants to buy a Fender guitar. Here, serve him a bunch of ads.
Exactly.
Go.
But that said, it does work because then I'll see ads. I'm like, ooh, and I'll buy it. But no, but the Google News feed is absolutely personalized to me. I guess where you could differentiate from that. And what I'm curious about Artifact is like, what is the AI? What is feeding the AI? Because I do think that there is a crossroad between the Twitter as a news service, as a curated news service by people I trust, versus a news feed based off my search and what Google thinks my interests are.
Yeah,
and because I use Twitter as a news feed because I followed, Jason, I follow you. When I now follow you, I follow Tom Merritt. I follow other, other great, amazing people in the tech space, and they post interesting stuff that is, they used to post things that I found interesting. To that is, I use it. I rely more on Google News now than Twitter as a news source. But back in the day when I did, it was the idea of like, here's a group of several hundred people who I know and trust and think that if they find something interesting enough to post to Twitter, I also will find it interesting. Google can't know that. Mm-hmm. Or at least Curly doesn't know it.
They gave up on their social, Google Plus.
Exactly,
they could have, but they gave up on that. It also actually reminds me of Nuzzle, right? Like that was what you're describing. Nuzzle was how I did exactly that. Rest in peace. I guess now it's part
Nuzzle?
of yes, and I don't know if it's still part of Blue or if they got rid of that or what, because I don't subscribe.
Oh, no,
to
Twitter
Blue.
bought it, right?
Sorry, no. Did I say Google? Twitter bought it, and it was part of Blue, and I don't know that it's still part of Blue in the Musk era. I honestly have no idea, but
actually, that's something really interesting. It's like how. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. May 21. They say Twitter is killing Nuzzle. So.
Oh.
Well, they bought Nuzzle, they killed it, but then they brought back core functionality from it later with the launch of Twitter Blue. It was one of their main selling points and now you can see what what the people you respect or you follow are sharing, the news stories that matter most to them. And it was obvious that was like, okay, they took the sauce from Nuzzle and put it in Twitter Blue. It wasn't as fully featured as Nuzzle was. And I don't know if that part of the service is gone now, but
in the Twitter Blue offering, now it does say top articles is a shortcut to the most shared articles of your network. This feature automatically lists most shares articles for people you know. So it's still in there.
Yeah, it's still in there. Which would be maybe the only reason I would ever subscribe to Twitter Blue, but obviously it's not important enough for me to have done that. What were you going to say, Wynn?
Oh, sorry. So, kind of to Ron's point about how maybe the Artifact algorithm might differentiate from Google News, and I have no idea how the Google News algorithm works, by the way. But something else that they did mention, Sisterman and Krieger mentioned, is that they're going to focus on the amount of time that you read something rather than just straight up clicks. So I think there is a desire to kind of look for deeper kind of interest rather than just kind of like a shallow, like, hey, you clicked on this, this, and that. You must like this and this and that.
Gosh, I
hey,
hope
you
so.
bought that
Yeah.
thing, so you must want to buy 15,000 more of that thing. So I'm just going to serve you more of the same thing, even though it's not necessary. I think that there is a sense that they're trying to take certain lessons from, current competitors and maybe going for more depth. And I do think, now thinking about it, the conversation is going to be a big deal, because I think not just, so what I liked Twitter for was not just, seeing what people that I trusted and respected to, posted and shared, but also their personal kind of like takes on it, whether that was like a journalist sharing an article on Ukraine and sharing kind of like related kind of anecdotes and experiences and their perspective on it, kind of to add context, flavor, and also sometimes counterpoints to things. So I think that also, that kind of conversational thing might be an advantage over Google News, because at the same time, as you are reading and consuming things that people you trust present to you, you also are taking in some of their, kind of additional, opinions and takes, and kind of maybe even like, changes in the stream of the conversation or in the story, or things that might follow up on, which I do think is genuinely interesting to see, not just the news, but what people are saying about the news.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh yeah, for sure.
maybe that's a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. Google News definitely does not show that to you. It might surface a lot of the same stories, but it doesn't show you what others feel about it. If that has a social, if Artifact has a social component to it, that's got to be a big part of it, right? I care about the people, that I follow, their opinion on these things. That's why I want to read this news, because they all said that it was important enough to read. So yeah, interesting. I'm certainly curious.
I signed up
to get in. I signed up for the wait list. They ask you to use your phone number, and then you get a text message that says, "All right, we'll let you know soon." So if you feel comfortable giving your phone number, that's kind of one strange thing about that. But there you go.
Yep.
Artifact.
Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. Your business is unique, so your IT, audit, and cybersecurity solutions should be too. ACI Learning customizes training bundles tailored for your business. ACI Learning, transforming the way companies train to fuel the modern workforce. Visit acilearning.com and let ACI power up your IT team.